from yesterday. It's always a privilege to welcome such diverse group of participants. We have such an eminent panel here also. We have conservationists, students, journalists, enforcement professionals, and wildlife enthusiasts from across India and other countries also, I believe. As usual, there would be a question and answer session at the end of both the talks, and where you will be putting your queries, and we will be trying to answer your question. But please, yeah, refrain from any politically inclined or other inappropriate queries. Those who have been a part of yesterday's session would already would know how illegal wildlife trade and more importantly our topic, the illegal exotic pet trade market, has been ripping apart our natural ecosystems. We talked about how several species in a large scale are pushed to the brink of extinction. We learned how these organized trade had found a platform online uh, across countries beyond barriers, and how species from all over the world are available to anyone who has the money to pay for it, be it alive or dead. We also learned from Jose how the wildlife trade market in India has evolved in the past few decades. We started with mongoose hairbrush, and now we are in an era where wildlife trade has gone online, and we are asking for sugar gliders. We are no longer just a source country, but we are a destination. Like we are the consumers, and we are also the transit routes for these this international transboundary trades happening. We also learned about how organizations like SAWEN and Wildlife Trust of India has been collaborating with similar organizations across the border and inside our country with organizations like the customs, the border security forces, and other enforcement agencies to try and put a stop to this massacre. Well, in today's session, we aim to focus on the emerging trade and the regional insights with respect to the legal aspect of it. We will also delve into the online trade market that has evolved in the South Asia markets. We will have Mr. Lovish Sharma, who will be focusing on the legal and policy aspects later. But continuing from his session from yesterday, we are happy to have Dr. Krishna Prasad Acharya back with us. For the new participants joining us today, Dr. Acharya serves as the first Secretary General of South Asia Wildlife Enforcement Network, which is SAWEN, SAWEN. He has over 30 years of leadership in forestry, biodiversity conservation, and environmental governance, and a deep expertise in both national and transboundary conservation. Before he got his role at SAWEN, he was with the Nepal government and had held senior positions like being the Director General of the Department of National Parks and Wildlife Conservation and the Secretary at the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, which eventually shaped Nepal's conservation policies, protected area management strategies, and transboundary initiatives. This includes the it being the first ever zero poaching of rhinos in the country. So, welcome back, Dr. Acharya.
Thank you
Uh,
very much, Madhubhai.
Acharya sir, cyber trade has exploded in the recent years, especially with exotic animals being sold online in platforms like Instagram, Telegram, Facebook, uh, which is active in India, but there are other online platforms across the world in other countries. So, can you give us a brief overview in about these emerging trades, especially in South Asian markets?
I think let me share a very short. I made one PPT, and then
Yes, sir.
it will be much easier to explain about this trade. So, very good afternoon to all participants. Thank you very much for WTI and team of the JOS for inviting me for today's discussion. I'm Secretary General of South Asia Wildlife Enforcement Network. I'll present as the facilitator asked. This online cybercrime and pet trade is one of the most urgent and very complex threat to biodiversity. And wildlife crime in cyberspace, it is based. This presentation is based on our own research, which will highlight some emerging trend, real example from India across South Asia, our challenges, and how should we go ahead. So I'm ready. You are listening me, no?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
You're audible.
So if just say one slide on itself on South Asia Wildlife Information Network. It is a regional intergovernmental body for the benefit of new participant and includes all 8 countries from South Asia, and it is mandated to combat wildlife crime in the region and also beyond. So we support member countries to strengthening wildlife law enforcement to combat wildlife crime, which does also include all kinds of threat, including the cyber crime. So today, actually, we live in online world where the world now is connected, the digital world, with over 5.5 billion internet users. You can have a look on this. Facebook, biggest one, 3.07, and all these. I think this is only a short list. Maybe there are more where people are connected and they spend on average 2 hours, 24 minutes. Very recent last year study shows, how people are engaged. Sometime, TikToks, you can see, very high engagement of the people. And coming back to the, wildlife cybercrime in the region, online wild trafficking refers, by definition, it's the illegal trade in protected wildlife species and their derivatives facilitated through online platforms and digital means. And it does include, encompasses a wide range of activities, including the sale of live animals, exotic pets, animal pets, and products derived from those species. The digital shift actually accelerated during and after COVID-19. So what is the global picture? Very short, one slide you can have a look. The GI2C recently found the study conducted across Brazil, Thailand, and shows 477 illegal advertisement in 18 protected species in just 3 months. So you can just imagine the scale. And traffic reported 70 or 8% of cheetah trade were on Facebook. And online platforms are now mainstream, channels for trafficking. Singapore reported just in 2 years' time, wildlife trade is double. So it's not happening, in our part only. It's happening everywhere. So in South Asia, this is a study, small study, internal study conducted by ourselves in our small team in office. So we found that a use of code word, hashtag, close groups help criminal, easily evade detection. Among us, India and Bangladesh show high online activity, and commonly traded items include coral, turtles, exotic birds, and superstition actually also has played a role through social media to disseminate to wider people, just creating belief that these wildlife parts are useful and they are good luck, something like that. I will come back with some example later on. Like Hata Jodi, we all know about this. And 41% of the people in South Asia, for this, in our research, it is mainly the Facebook, followed by WhatsApp. So, species, Sifan Indrazal is the most, traded in our most advertised species. And India cover 48% of those.
Yeah.
And some of those, picture, let's say a post in the Instagram, post in the TikTok, and the species, how they are creating the impact. And you can see, there are specific private groups for wildlife trade, and private and encrypted groups serve as a illegal marketplaces where users are vetted. So it's not, we are not able to enter,
Yeah.
because they didn't allow us. So it's vetted, and transaction occurs in codes, making it challenging and to intercept unless infiltrated, and which need very, calibered or qualified capacity, and of course your software, hardware, everything with that level. So again, some example from the private group where Tokyo Gecko is easily a buyer in Bangladesh. See the see see the followers. There sometimes they have thousands birds with their thousands. I'll go through some example. Just online platforms like Amazon or Flipkart, whatever. Click, buy, exploit. wildlife trade in e-commerce channels, how their advertising is. Some of the example are exporterindia.com, Amazon, restricted, this moss liquid fragrance, Attar, easily available
Mhm.
on the Amazon. And you can have this in tortoise and other. And this is exotic birds buy sale in Bangladesh, 1.1 in a group, close group members.
1,000 members.
In Nepal, easily pet shop. And this is also example from Sri Lanka. And this is the role of social media actually in spreading superstitious beliefs. And they say
Mhm.
using this plant are said to be protected from harmful forces, including but not limited to ghosts. So you will have magical protection. So people believe on, and people are encouraged, and by this narrative really for creating additional demand for rare species and their derivatives. One interesting, initially there were traditional healer indigenous people actually who in a small rural village make or use and produce some oils or use for the treatment. Now, it has been a scale of young people are being engaged for, let's say, this is example of Spiny tail lizard, which is STL, the oil is extracted and sold in the market very easily with the sample. So I think the role of social media seems to be very, very, let's say, vulnerable to in terms of creating threats with extension of those, species. This is an example. And so as I mentioned about this already, हाथा जोड़ी किसी कंगाल व्यक्ति का मत मालामाल बना सकता है. So everybody wants this. This is again the tortoise sold as a good luck. So everybody want to keep in their home. A very recent study, 2024 study shows, and YouTube themselves, and the reaction by the people. What the study found was it's a very positively engaged, people with the video of exotic pets. And somebody, the cute, they want to keep everything, cute things with their possession. So they are encouraged to buy it. And this sometimes the social media also is playing important role, in normalizing and encouraging people keeping these endangered species as a pets. I mean, there is no more feeling of these are wilds. Now these all are to be a pet species. So this is the role of media, which we haven't. You can see, this is as so the title appears. Pakistani elites love exotic wildlife, and this means the other people who saw it, they'll be much motivated. They are not wildlife. We can easily kept. These are the pets. So there are global alliance working on this. Uh, I have seen some critics, in terms of really how effective they are. There are, mentioning of 24.1 million prohibited wildlife. Sometimes they are scaling to others, or even, there were critics whether this is really effective or not. They have done good things, but comparing with the need, maybe we need much more to address this. Therefore, they are what it's good that these platforms, watchdogs, are trying to regulate content and
Mhm.
enforce policy. This is good part. The scale of the problem demands regional and some international more cooperation in this regard. So in this region, actually challenging and tackling online wildlife crime, as you said, some of the major challenges in the region, not specific but very global, is in anonymity, very difficult, encrypted, and the platforms and the payment are in the crypto. So it's really the capacity of wildlife enforcement official. They even don't know what is crypto, and then we don't think of how is the payment is made, how it's going to impact, what is, let's say, laundering, all these things. And even it's the same with the jurisdiction of the different countries. So the wildlife agencies lack in the region about the cyber investigation and tools. One of the is, paper news from India, exotic pet trade goes online, payment made through cryptocurrency, Department Revenue Intelligence from India. So really, this has been realized. The other part I'm now trying to highlight is those issues now has been realized by enforcement agencies, but now there should be a strong mechanism how we are going to handle it. In Savin ourselves, we are initiating it. We can say, no, we have started some training program in joint collaboration with some
Yeah.
institution. But this is one of those program on online, let's say, open source intelligence training, and are incorporating all of those, our training, where it's a legal documentation training or, symposium on judge or session, where we just try to make aware all law enforcement agencies and for the people from judiciary about this, ongoing wildlife crime through cyberspace. So this will be started, but we are doing on very small scale. As we know, India is more active and more advanced in South Asia region compared to the other member countries. We all know, the WCCB WildNet campaign, and which has also been regarded as one of the successful program by CITES Secretariat. So this has to be scaled up to other member countries. And as I said, these are the challenges through study, and we found, maybe on the legal part and others part, Lovish will highlight this just to put a few,
Mm.
bullet points. We our wildlife law, they do not include cyber. They are very, old wildlife law, and we have very limited digital forensic capacity, and our law are not updated, and we lack a common regional SOP for, cyber wildlife trade, and we have language barrier, and we have a technical barrier learning on encryption, and we have this cross-border enforcement gap. And very last year, UNODC 2024 drug worldwide drug report has mentioned in a place where they have mentioned that forest crime are also linked with other form of crime, means there is crime convergence. And for our part of the region, all member countries, wildlife trade is a transnational crime is not a priority issue. There are other issue. For example, drug or drug crime within cyber crime. Let's say there are other priority, not the IWT. So we are facing that kind of challenges. And so, realizing this, the rapidly spreading WCCB India was mentioning there is annual, I think, around 200% growth in India, jumping in the trade from physical trade to online trade. So in-person must be faster and technically backed up. So in the region, maybe we can lead with training, digital reporting, and cross-border protocols. So we match digital speed with digital responses. What we can do, another part is like GITOC is, operating in different part of the region. Those studies I mentioned are from the Thailand and Brazil, actually. They are working where there are regional unit to support wildlife crime. Maybe WTI itself, we had a couple of time conversation on this, that how, let's say, we can host a hub where there is digital reporting with AI tools, there is system development and capacity development of law enforcement agency, and paired with really ground intervention. This is the only way how we can achieve. And then the next, I have two more slides actually. Develop regional cybercrime training curriculum, which is not available. And there is a reason why we need all these regional things. Is we have shared spaces and the same platforms mostly, and trafficking route across the border. We have many borders in common, and we have more or less similar legal and enforcement gaps. Except India or other all, I believe other all countries have on the same status on digital crime investigation or prosecution. We have uneven national capacities, but we also share some common language.
Mm.
India and Nepal, maybe we have some common currency.
Yeah.
And India maybe has, as mentioned, 15,000 open border, forest border, and South Asia region has more than 20,000 kilometer of forest border. So there is a good scope of, working together.
Mm.
A technical platform may be easier to compete. And so I mean, ourselves, we are trusted by government, so it could be one of the good, coordination mechanism for united, creating united as strength in South Asia in global wildlife crime policy. And what I would like to, conclude with is South Asia's cyber wildlife threat, it crosses border easily. We have porous border, we with law enforcement and monitoring is difficult, and acting alone is no longer effective. So Savin can help the fill the gaps and connecting countries, sharing intelligence and speaking with one voice. Together we can match the speed of cybercrime, not individually, with regional coordination and turn our shared vulnerabilities into collective strength. So I think I address many of the concern of Madhumay with this. Thank you very much.
Yes, yes, yes.
And I end my presentation. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. But I have one more thing to
Sure,
ask.
sure, sure,
You
sure.
did talk about superstitions, which made me curious.
Yes,
Like
yes, that's true.
internet, the advent of internet, it's supposed to spread facts, but it is spreading superstition also. But along with superstition and the ease of marketing in the online markets like Facebook, these kind of platforms, have you seen any particular species, new species that is being brought into India, which was not there earlier? Like something that has
Uh,
surprised you?
and I think those species that uh, maybe many of those species, superstition. I do not have the right answer for you at the moment. Uh, Maybe some birds like coming from Brazil. Mm, I know when they are good birds, you have good luck. Maybe those turtles, and when you have a turtle, you are with the good love, and you are protected from all those ghosts and others.
Hmm.
It is common, I think, with the birds and reptiles, but we can find some more species. Yeah.
Also, as a follow-up, I also have to ask this: since we are seeing a increase in exotics being
Yes.
imported to India, has there been a decrease in the endemic species being in trade?
It doesn't, it doesn't,
So it's a
it
very
not
lame
necessarily
question,
be
but
true, no,
still, yeah.
not necessarily be true. But what we can see, we can observe is even what you say, the fourth, global wildlife report is mentioning that there is a decrease in the previously known, trade of endangered species like
Oh.
rhino or, tiger.
Hmm.
Maybe it is because they have changed, changed the way or modus operandi. We don't know. It may be because they have changed the derivatives, like they are moving from bones to glue. So many people they don't know it, and they have moved to lesser known species. One
Hmm.
reason that is possible. Maybe the detection, how much detection we are making is another reason. How responsive our law enforcement
Right.
agencies are on
Yeah.
investigation and detection compared to the upfront, the model,
Hmm.
upfront they have changed, the traffickers have changed maybe. And another reason, maybe there are now much more attraction on this so-called so-called captive breed, more attractive reptiles and others. People have changed their behavior. Maybe that may be the reason. Actually, we really we don't know what is the real truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you for answering my lame questions.
That's
But yeah, but next we have with us is also Mr. Lovish Sharma. Mr. Sharma is an advocate at the High Court of Delhi. He has a demonstrated history of working on diverse matters pertaining to criminal constitution and also environmental laws. He has a bachelor's degree in law from the University of Delhi. He also holds a postgraduate diploma in international environment law from the Indian Academy of International Law and Diplomacy. Further, Mr. Sharma is also a member of the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law. He is also empaneled as a law enforcement trainer with the Crime Control Bureau, the Government of India, the National Academy of Customs, and Wildlife Trust of India with us. Uh, He has trained more than 2,000 officials of various law enforcement agencies, including the state police, judicial officers, state forest department, customs, paramilitary forces. And he has mentored these people. He has represented India in the ENODC South Asia Regional Consultation on Addressing Wildlife Crime, held in New Delhi in 2022, and was also engaged as a resource person for legal workshops on Delhi Preservation of Trees Act 1994, organized by the Mahatma Gandhi Institute for Combating Climate Change, Government of Delhi. Mr. Sharma, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you, Madhume, for having me. And thanks to the Wildlife Trust of India, Jose Lewis, CEO, Devabroto Sarkar, and Mr. Krishna Acharya, the Learned Secretary General, SAWEN, and to all the participants, very good evening. And it's always a pleasure talking on the laws governing the conservation, and particularly this topic on which we are deliberating today. So,
Yes.
yeah, again, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Lovish. So, Lovish, so to start off, could you give us a brief understanding on the legal protection status for various wildlife, which should include both flora and fauna in India, and also the exotic pets?
Yes. So see, we have Wildlife Protection Act, which was enacted in 1972. Prior to that, the only central level legislation which we had for the protection of wild flora and fauna was the Wild Birds Animal Protection Act 1912. So with the course of time, as the previous law become redundant, the Parliament enacted the Wildlife Protection Act, which we have today, which has seen numerous amendment from time to time, and the last one was 22nd, which has addressed the menace of illegal exotic trade and enforcement of the CITES mandate to which India is the signatory, etc. So for the native species, if we go prior to 22, the protection accorded by the Wildlife Protection Act 1972 was only to the native species, the endemic species of plants and the specified animals.
Right.
And there was no such protection for the exotic species in India, the CITES species particularly. And the situation before 22nd was that if in case there is exotic trade happening or some kind of activities wherein exotic species were involved, whether it was captive breeding or it was import and export, so the only legislation there to keep a check on such trade was the Customs Act, and we also had the foreign trade policy. So only at the time, the impediment was that if such trade gets traced at the entry point of India, then only we, the government, the enforcement agencies were able to tackle the menace of the illegal exotic trade. And if in case such consignments were able to sneak into the territorial land of India, the domestic land, which we also call hinterland, then there was no such legislation to combat such exotic illegal trade. Because Wildlife Protection Act did not provide any protection to the exotic species, and the customs only had the power to apprehend and seize such consignments which were not in adherence to the customs law and the foreign trade policy. So the situation was that if in case such exotic species were reaching the domestic land through illegal routes, so there was no protection, no enforcement agencies were equipped legally to tackle such a situation. So this was a situation prior to 22, that only customs and the foreign trade policies were the weapon with the enforcement agencies to combat such illegal activities pertaining to the exotic species in India. Now, with the 22nd Amendment, we saw material changes in the Wildlife Protection Act. The amendment introduced the mandate of CITES. So the domestic legislation, Wildlife Protection Act, incorporated new chapter 5B, which furthers the mandate of the CITES. CITES came into effect in 1975 July. India became the signatory in 1976 July. So almost after 50 years, you can say that the mandate of the CITES was enforced through a domestic legislation. So with 22nd Amendment, if you see the amendments, so it addresses the registration of such exotic species. In law, we call it scheduled specimen.
Right.
So now the law, legally, we don't call it exotic species, we call them scheduled specimen. All the flora and fauna which are part of the CITES appendix, we have 4 appendix in the CITES. So all that flora and fauna in the local law, Wildlife Protection Act, it's called scheduled specimen.
Okay.
So the registration of scheduled specimen is mandatory now as per the Indian laws. The rules which were framed in furtherance to the 22nd Amendment. Now we have numerous rules which have been framed after the amendment. The central government was empowered to further the objective of the amendment. So now the registration is required mandatorily if somebody wants to breed such exotic species in captivity or artificially propagate it. You need the license from the central government. If somebody, the Indian citizen, wants to export or import such exotic species, they require requisite permissions and permits from the central government. The central government agencies which deal with all the trade, registration, possession, the regulatory body is called the management authority. So all these things which we are talking about was due to the 22nd Amendment, which actually addressed this menace of exotic species, because an anomaly of law was developed that there was no law to protect exotic species in India once they enter the domestic land. The forest, the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, the state police were not equipped under any provision of the law to apprehend such people and to seize such exotic birds or animals. It was only the customs, and the customs were only confined to the entry exit point. If in case they find such consignments, they had the powers under the Customs Act. Now, what remarkable uh, thing which happened with 22nd is that the customs also have been now empowered to investigate, not investigate, I would say, to detect such crimes involving the exotic species in the domestic land. And forest department who were, or the WCCB or the police officers who were only empowered to investigate for the species which were native species, part of the schedules under Wildlife Protection Act, they are now also empowered to detect crimes, investigate crimes pertaining to the exotic species. So this is the scenario right now.
One question that is pertinent here. So yesterday also this was asked: if a exotic is seized, like illegally brought in exotic is seized in India, what happens to the animal? Acharya sir said that they are mostly sent to zoo as a first response, but there are no vets or biologists who can handle those animals because those are not native ones and they don't know anything about the animals. How does this have to go further? Like what happens with the animals? What are the
So
legal
yes,
implications of it also?
right. So first talking about the factual scenario in India, which is prevailing right now, a lot of exotic species which are illegally imported to India are getting seized. And the question comes as to where such seized live exotic species to be kept. The law provides that, first of all, the rule is that these exotic species have to be repatriated back to their country from where it was exported. So the country of export on its own cost has to take those species back. Now, if you check over Google and you search on the repatriation of the exotic species from India, you'll find a few cases from Bombay, Delhi, and other airports, particularly the airports, that the species were seized by the Indian Customs or by the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, or in coordination with other agencies, that illegally imported species were seized, people were arrested, and these species were repatriated back to their country from where they were exported. Now, the CITES provision, if you see the articles, the article 3 of the CITES would provide that these species have to be repatriated back to the country from where they were exported at the cost of that country only. So the rule is that these species because they don't belong to this, they are not native to India, and they cannot survive maybe because of the climatic conditions, etc. So they have to be taken back from to the country of their origin, or maybe possibly to the country from they were exported. So this is the rule. And what is the exception? That till the time they cannot be repatriated for XYZ reason, maybe lack of coordination between the agencies or reluctance on the part of the other country to take it back from where it was illegally smuggled to India. So the law provides that these species, exotic animals, be kept in a rescue center. So if you see, as I mentioned, Chapter 5B, which was introduced in the Indian Wildlife Protection Act. So that chapter, Section 49Q, provides that such animals be seized, and then it should be sent back, repatriated to the country from where they were illegally smuggled. And for the time being, if you cannot do it, then you have to keep it in a rescue center. Now, lately, you would see that Northeast is facing a lot of illegal exotic trade because there are porous borders. It's surrounded by Bangladesh, Burma, and there are a lot of cases which the forest department are apprehending such criminals, offenders who are delving into such illegal activities of trading such exotic birds, etc. So now the Northeast, most probably in Assam, they are coming up with such a facility called a rescue center. So it will be run by the coordination of Seven Sisters administration, and we'll be having a rescue center because it's not easy on the administrative level every time to repatriate such species for XYZ reason. Maybe there are countries which are reluctant, or the paperwork requires a time. So the question comes, even if the other country is willing to take it back on its own cost, because cost is also a factor to be considered here, because the country from where it has illegally been exported has to take it back on its own cost. So maybe the paperwork, even if there is no reluctance on the other country, the paperwork would take a considerable lot of time. So in that a scenario, you need a rescue center with experts who can take care of such exotic species. So the rule, in nutshell, the answer is that the seized exotic animals have to be repatriated back as per the Indian law. And for the time being, if the process takes time, or the process is kept in abeyance, etc., it's suspended, it has to be sent to a rescue center which has requisite facilities to take care of such exotic species.
Right. Next, I believe there's a portal, central government portal called e-Parivesh, where people need to register if they have an exotic in their possession. So, what is? Can you tell us more about it? And what happens if people don't register? And what are the means that the government is tracking these animals that are brought in and are not being registered?
Right. So as per the law, after 22 amendment, the provisions which were incorporated in the new chapter, which talks about the CITES mandate, now it is mandatory that any person, whether it's a breeder or it's a pet owner, whomsoever, any person in possession of an exotic species has to mandatorily register that species with the central government management authority. The process of registration requires online registration of those species on the Parivesh portal, which is run by the Ministry of Environment. So Parivesh is a portal where you are required to register the living animal species which the person is in possession of. Number one. Number two, if anybody who requires breeding of such exotic species, they are required to take license from the concerned chief wildlife warden of the state, that the person so desires to deal into breeding of such exotic species in captivity or through artificial propagation. So registration is mandatory after 22nd. Even if you see the situation prior to 2022, you would see that the Parivesh portal existed, and it was introduced as a amnesty scheme, as a welfare scheme, that the government, as the legislation was not into effect. The bill was pending, the Wildlife Protection Act bill. So there was this scheme by the central government that no coercive step will be taken against all the people, citizens who are in possession of such exotic species. They are simply required to register as to how many or what kind of species they are in possession of. So a simple registration was required in order to check as to how many number of species are in India which are exotic species in possession of the people. After 22nd also the registration, and for the participants, the rule is the living animal species registration rules 2023 that was brought into effect after the amendment. So this rule provides for the entire process as to how the registration will take place. The registration takes place with the central government. Number second, if in case, so how stringent the provisions have been made, that if in case somebody is in possession of exotic species, number one, they have to get it registered at the Parivesh portal, the central government website. If in case there is an offspring from such exotic animals which the person is in possession of, so it is also mandatory that such offspring be also registered with the management authority, because it's also a CITES species. It's also an exotic species.
Right.
For example, if a person is having a gray parrot, a pair of a gray parrot, and there is an offspring from that couple, which is from the pair, which is registered with the management authority, now that offsprings also have to be registered with the management authority, and that too within 7 days.
Yeah.
Within 7 days, they have to register it. Number third, as I said, first registration is mandatory. Number second, offspring registration is mandatory. If in case such specimen, the exotic animal dies, so even the death has to be also reported to the central government via management authority. Because what is the intention of the law? The intention is very simple, that we want to keep track of every species, every offspring, every specimen which is in India right now, so that we can focus on the illegal activities, or we can later on trace it from the registration what all illegal activities are taking place over the exotic species.
Right. Right.
So this is about registration. Also, if somebody wants to deal in captive breeding, they have to take license from the chief wildlife warden. Eventually it gets registered with the management authority of the central government as well, and record is maintained by the chief wildlife warden. Obviously, after a thorough inquiry, such licenses are granted of dealing in breeding of such exotic species. Number three, if somebody wants to import or export directly from outside India, then also there are rules, which is the Wildlife Protection International Trade Rules 2024. So for that also, it is now mandatory that you take permission from the management authority, furnish proper documentation, import permits, etc., etc., and then only you can export or import such live animals. So this is the scenario, and anyone who contravenes all these provisions, non-adherence compliances of such rules and the provisions of the Wildlife Protection Act under Chapter 5B would entail punishment. Punishment depends on the species. Like Appendix 1 species of the CITES, the punishment in India goes from minimum 3 to maximum 7. And if it's of Appendix 2, 3, 4 of the CITES, the punishment is up to 3 years.
Right.
So all the rules are mandatorily to be followed, and these are penal provisions. So a penalty is attached in case somebody doesn't comply. Somebody keeps such animals without getting it registered. Somebody deals in the breeding of such animals through captivity or artificial propagating it without taking licenses. So it would entail penal consequences.
So you talked about registration. So I was thinking, like, if a bunch of animals have been illegally brought into the country, and now they are being registered. So is there a thing in the kind of documentation you need to provide during registration that would take care of this illegal inflow of animals?
See, once you apply for the registration, any kind of registration, whether you are seeking any license or you are merely seeking a registration as a pet owner, there will be a thorough inquiry done by the State Forest Department, and then the such inquiry report would be furnished to the management authority. So if in case such inquiry concludes that these animals were brought through illegal channels, so the registration cannot be done. So now in India, let's say for import and export, when the law provides that if in case you want to import any exotic species, you have to take proper permission, CITES permit, central government permission, then only you can import. So the law is clear. If you don't do it, penal consequences would follow. Now here is a case where a person through illegal channel brings such exotic species and tries to get it registered. So he cannot, because the mere import of such species would entail penal consequences. But let's say such a person who illegally imports such exotic species further sells it to other person, and that person goes for registration, then also the situation would be that within 30 days of the possession, you need to register such animal. The question in the inquiry would be as to from where you have procured such animal. So it is for the citizens of India to understand that mistake of law is not an excuse. We have to do a due diligence before buying such exotic species. Whether you buy from a pet shop, you are required, a law presupposes you to be diligent and do a due diligence inquiry as to whether the person from where we are buying such exotic species are legally authorized by the central government to deal into such activities or not. So it all will be illegal. And to the participants here who are not from the legal field, most of them are from the conservation field or people who are wildlife enthusiasts, even if they want to keep such exotic species at pet, from wheresoever you are buying such species, the law would suppose that you were diligent enough before buying, that you bought such exotic species from a legally authorized breeder, seller.
Right. Lovish, you do a lot of trainings, like you work with the enforcement agencies all across India. So, what are the challenges that you think they are facing, and what kind of training, like what special training do you give in with regards to case documentation, all the legal aspect of it? How to make the cases stronger?
See, there is actually two limbs to this question. The first is when we talk about enforcement of the laws pertaining to the native species. Number second, when it comes to enforcement, investigation, detection of the crime which pertains to the exotic species. So in the first scenario, the challenges which are faced by the forest department, particularly the forest department, is that the lack of legal knowledge. They are not well equipped with the legal knowledge. They require to be upskilled on the intricacies of the procedural law involved. The root cause, if you trace, is the induction training, because if you see all those forest training academies and if you see their curriculums of training when it comes to law, unlike police academies, the syllabus does not, you know, contains much of the investigation part. As I have discussed, and I tell the forest officials as well, and they accede with me that the training of the forest officials are particularly, you can say, conservation centric, forestry centric, not investigation centric. So there is a dire need of changing the course curriculum, and there is this sense of enforcement which we require to instill in the forest department, particularly because police goes through a lot of legal training, and police on their day-to-day business are dealing with court cases. They are dealing in a lot of legislation, whether it's BNS, IPC, whether it's narcotics, etc. So many, because they are the main law and order agency of any state. So they are any day on a better footing when it comes to crime detection, investigation, and prosecution. unlike the forest department. So the biggest challenge is that the induction training syllabus needs to be changed. We need to instill a sense of enforcement in the forest department. They lack confidence when it comes to investigation because there is a less exposure. And number second, that during the service, there is you see the legal department which are attached with the forest department. You won't find any legal assistance to the forest department. There are no legal officers which are recruited across nation. There may be some forest department having their legal associates hired, but they don't have special public prosecutors which are only and only dedicated to the forest crimes, wildlife crimes. There are very less forest departments in India, state department, which have dedicated forest councils or special public prosecutors who are only dedicating their time to the wildlife and forest crimes. So there is no much legal assistance with the forest department. So there comes the lack of confidence to investigate a case. Even if they are good in investigation, faulty documentation are done, faulty, even if the proofs are collected, they are not at par with the strict rule of evidences which are required before the court of law in order to secure convictions. So it's particularly the root cause is lack of legal knowledge. You can say that is required to be changed, and not training during their tenure of service, but the legal trainings at the time of their induction when they are undergoing their training with the forest academies.
Right, right. So I have to say this, like, when there's a chance that we are trying to get involved with court cases or police or such matters, there's always a thinking twice. Like, you have a you have a second thought, because the legal system in India itself is believed to be full of hassles, like jurisdictory hassles and lengthy trials. Two questions: are there any means of speedy delivery of justice? And secondly, since we are all fighting this fight, what is it that the common audience, like us in the participant group or someone else, can do when they see a wildlife crime, and how do they report it?
So, see, answering your first question regarding the speedy disposal of cases, speedy justice. So, we have to be very cautious that justice hurried is also justice worried, and it's also called justice hurried is justice buried.
That is
So
true.
there are procedures which needs to be followed. But having said that, yes, we see cases in India that takes almost 7 to 8 years to conclude a trial, and then we have appeal provisions. It's the matter of right of the accused to challenge the order of the trial court before the sessions, then it goes to the high court and then to the Supreme Court. So it may take maybe 15 to 20 years. There may be people who don't challenge, and they may serve the sentence awarded to them in cases of conviction. So why 6 and 7 years? Because it's, you can say, lack of resources, pendency of so many cases in India, lack of infrastructure, less vacancies in the state. We have less judges as compared to the files which they preside over, the case files. So it's just not one reason. There are multiple reasons which link together for the failure of speedy disposal of cases. Also, what the state agencies can do, as opined, suggested by one of a judicial officer, which we work in very closely with in Assam, that usually you see the forest cases is usually the public witnesses, the officials of the forest department only in the wildlife crime cases.
Right.
Most of them, unless it's a raid in some hotel or in some dwelling area, some city area, then only the law would expect that you join an independent witness. But the cases in the forest, when an offense is committed in a forest area, in a sanctuary area, any protected area, you would see that there is no scope of finding an independent witness. So it's usually the cases are based upon the testimony of the forest officials only.
Yeah.
So now, as proposed by a few judicial officers who are working on the wildlife crime cases, that these officers can very much come and testify in a very short span of time. It's not a case that you need to trace down those witnesses whose testimonies you have recorded at the time of investigating. These are private people. Maybe some time is required. Their turn would come after 1 year. Those people are not traceable now, or maybe they have moved to some other state. And then, when on the date of hearing, when they have to testify as an independent witness, they are not available. And then we see Tariq pe Tariq thing happening in the courts of law in India. So, but usually it's the forest officials in such wildlife crime cases, the crimes particularly which are committed in the protected areas. So it's on the department to do the speedy, evidences in the court of law. Their officials are required to, uh, you know, go before the court and testify, give their evidences in the chief examination. So a lot can be done. Requests can be made to the court of law that, look, in this case, there are 10 forest officials only involved in order to prove the case. So we propose that if in case every month or every after fortnight, a forest officer can come to the court and testify if short dates can be accommodated to us. And you will find that most of the judicial officers would not be reluctant when it comes to the cases of, crimes affecting the environment. In India, we have a very proactive approach when it comes to the judiciary, whether it's the trial courts till the apex court. But having said that, the other reasons which contribute to the disposal of cases in a so many years it takes, the reasons are lack of infrastructure, lack of judges. We don't have much vacancies. And then there are a lot of cases when we see, if you go to a trial court, it's just not a dedicated wildlife or a forest crime court in all the states. Odisha only becomes the first state to have a dedicated wildlife court in each district, which is headed by the chief judicial magistrate of that district. Then we have in Assam and Kerala few districts which have dedicated forest courts, environment courts. But apart from that, in other courts, we don't have a dedicated courts because we don't have that official officers in the given area. So there are multiple reasons which contribute to that. But yes, what the department can do is get the testimonies fast tracked so that we can have a speedy disposal of the cases.
Right, right. And my second part of the question was also, what can the normal
Yes,
public
what can the
do?
citizens, what can the wildlife enthusiast or any responsible citizen can do when they come across any illegal activities affecting the wildlife, the exotic species? So they can very much inform the central government, the state government. For instance, in Delhi, we have the website, a grievance portal where you can uh, lodge a complaint, whether it's a tree offense, whether it's a wildlife offense. The Delhi Forest Department is very much swift when it comes to the online complaints. You just need to maybe furnish pictures or a video, give a brief about what kind of offense has occurred in what area, your mobile number, they would contact you and they would take swift action. Now, in other states, we need to check whether the state governments have such grievance portals, online helpline numbers. Central government, if you go to the central, log into the central government Ministry of Environment website, we have a wildlife helpline number. So that helpline number can be taken recourse of. Such complaints are further forwarded to the concerned state departments or to the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. So be the eyes and ears of the agencies by lodging such complaints on the online portals, which are available. The state governments have such grievance portals. You can lodge online complaints. Also, they have a scheme of anonymity. So maybe you would not be required to come and testify. The government agencies would investigate by their own on your information. So you can be eyes and ears, like the informers would do, like the departments, the enforcement agencies have mukbirs. So we can very much be the mukbirs, we can be the eyes and ears of the agencies. So central government has their helpline number. I assume many state forest department also have such helpline numbers. Number second, as per the law, if a person informs the state forest department or any other enforcement agencies which are mandated to act on a wildlife offense or a forest offense, and they don't act upon the complaint, then the law section 55 of the Wildlife Protection Act provides that any individual can give a 60-day notice to the state government that look, here is the 60 days, you act upon within the period of 60 days from the receipt of this notice. After that, the law provides the right to that individual to approach the court straight away and prosecute for the offense. Obviously, the prosecution cannot take place because the individual would not have all such resources which the police or the forest can collect given the kind of resources they have. So, but they can very much approach the court after 60 days notice to the state government, informing, intimating the court that they have failed to comply with the notice. We have given them 60 days time to act upon the complaint furnished by me. They have not acted upon. After the lapse of 60 days, here I am before the court, and we want that the matter be taken up by the court of law straight away.
That is amazing. We have so many, like, the legal system is all set. Like, it's perfect. Only
I guess
thing is,
the founder of Wildlife Trust of India, as told to me by some forest councils in the Tarai region, Ashok Kumar ji has done such kind of prosecution in the Dudwa area. He used to file his own cases after giving
Mhm.
60 days notice to the State Forest Department. If you don't act, we will act. I, as an individual, have been authorized by the law to file complaints against such offenders if the state is not willing to act.
Nice, nice. Thank you, Labish. I think Dr. Acharya also wanted to add a few bits to it.
In,
Yes, yes, sir.
in your previous question one on non-native species, actually, I have listed five as most common,
Huh.
including African grey to bell python and macaws, two types, and fish, dragonfish. And the already red orange slider turtle is, invasive in India. And I also have a comment, some supplement my sharing from SAWEN'S perspective in Lovish, remarks. It's very well presented. But we have developed a 7 days specifically law, documentation,
Hmm.
and how the court case could be very strong on behalf of, let's say, to prosecute. So
Right.
the well designed 7 days course is in place from our perspective. So that is the design, and I fully agree with you that there are no legal support to forest department.
Hmm.
So okay, that is the only point. And I have also posted this on the question answer session. Is somebody really want to have more on that
Yes,
remarks,
sir.
and
Yes, sir.
the non-site is especially important. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Acharya, and thank you so much, Lavish. I think we are already at 5:03, and this time to take in the questions, a few questions that are in the chat box. Dr. Acharya, since you're here, there's a question. What precautionary measures has been taken for wildlife trafficking in the Indo-Bhutan region, apart from district and state administration? From Shiladitya Acharya.
Yeah, I saw that question from Nepal, Indo-Bhutan border.
Bhutan, yeah.
Not very specific on those as a precaution. But there seems to be some development of SSP and forest official
Hmm.
border outputs in India and bordering actually including Assam and West Bengal.
Hmm.
And there are bilateral cooperation through India, Bhutan, and forest meetings. And we also try to have trifecta meeting actually from our side, India, Nepal, and Bhutan to address common problem there. That couldn't organize at that time, but we are on that plan. There are some transboundary protection area coordination meeting in between Royal Manas and Manas National Park between India and Bhutan.
Right.
And I think there is already a transboundary conservation agreement. And then there are engagement from NGO and civil society like WL Bhutan or ETI, WCT supporting smart patrolling and other digital-based platform and community-based monitoring, actually eco-development committees And more importantly, I think there have been some change in Indian government, central government rules on the previous existing, border meeting between wildlife enforcement agency. Now it has to be included in a border coordination meeting with magistrate, and this wildlife agenda now has been included in several meetings, including this Indo-Bhutan border meeting. So now this agenda also has to be discussed in that meeting, no, not a separate meeting. So
Yes.
anyway, it is in progressing, and some joint operation actually we planned through SAWEN last year also, and it couldn't materialize that time because of some, let's say, understanding. We are maybe this our forthcoming EC meeting may facilitate it, allowing some joint operation between borders law enforcement agencies to address this issue.
Okay, okay. Thank you, sir. There's one more question. I think Lavi should be the right person to answer. Has Parivesh registration for exotic species affected? What are your opinions on declaring exotic species owned by private institutions? I think they come under the same law. Lavish?
Yes. Yeah, I heard the question
Uh,
like, uh,
ah,
see, it's private institutions or private individual. My opinion would be that if in case it is just, see, I am all for law.
hmm,
So whether it's the private institutions or a private individual, if after a thorough inquiry, the central government is of the opinion that a person can keep such exotic species, then I guess, in my opinion, when it's all legal, then there is no issue in keeping such exotic species.
yeah.
Maybe the question needs some elaboration. If there is some kind of detriment, if in case a private institution keeps it, then maybe that requires some elaboration to the question. But a simple mere opinion, if a private institution law, the person as per the law is not only a living person, but it's also a company or it's an institution or a trust, etc. So
Right.
the law man, so law doesn't differ between a company or a human.
Hmm.
So if you see the person definition under the Wildlife Protection Act, so maybe the question may require some elaboration as to is there any detriment attached to keeping such exotic species by private institution. Also, it depends what kind of institution is that, what is the purpose of keeping such exotic species. So I think that requires to be first delved into before I may give my opinion.
True, true, true. Okay, there's one more thing. Is there any species that is non-CITES listed and is being trafficked into India? Krishna,
So
sir?
see, the very word traffic
I
says that it is illegally, imported into India, which means that
Hmm.
you are evading the customs tariff, and
Hmm.
maybe through illegal channels you are. So it's smuggling, it's trafficking. So
Right.
trafficking itself is illegal. So but yes, if it enters the domestic land, is there any protection of such species which is not under the CITES, not under the schedules of the Wildlife Protection Act? Is there any protection? The answer is plain no. But if it gets apprehended at the customs, the same scenario which was before 2022, CITES was not given, CITES species were not giving any protection. So if in case they
Yeah.
get apprehended at the entry point, it's an offense. If it gets into the domestic land, nobody can do anything of such exotic species. Same with now
Hmm.
such species which are non-CITES, non-native, protected under the Wildlife Protection Act. What can be done of those species? If they are found in the domestic Indian territory, I don't think anything can be done unless you prove that there is some cruelty to that animal. Then the Prevention of Cruelty to Animal Act, which mostly you would
Hmm.
see applies to those domestic animals, farmed animals, or the stray cats, stray dogs, that penal legislation which we have for the protection, that would get attracted.
Yeah. Are there any laws for invertebrates? I think law also applies to the invertebrates. Satvik.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. Who is it?
Then
I
there
have
is one
answered
question by
the most common
Mr.
It's
non-CITES.
Krishna, sir.
No, no, I have answered, provided a list of non-CITES listed species that are trafficked into India. And yesterday I made a presentation on how CITES trade and CITES species and non-CITES species, it's how is the laundering is happening and how we to brought all those non-CITES species very attractive in the way. Yes, and regarding the legal implication, I think he has already, Lewis has mentioned. In some of the countries, there is a list. If there are non-CITES species and non-native, but there is some legal provision by which can be utilized, for legal prosecution in some countries. No?
Right. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
I'll
We
take
hope.
one question from Mr.
Yes.
Banerjee.
Banerjee.
Uh,
What is
I'm just scrolling up. There was this one question from Davepayan Banerjee. So the
Doipan?
first question is, do we have quarantine center to import or export exotic animals in India legally? We do have quarantine centers at many
Yeah.
airports. These are called AQCI, Animal Quarantine Certification Center. So it comes under the Animal Husbandry Ministry. So we do have quarantine centers. Can we keep non-CITES species which are not endemic? So this I have already answered.
Uh,
Hello, can I speak?
yes, Mansi.
Hello,
Go ahead.
yes. Hi, Lovish, Mansa this side. I had a question regarding retaliatory killing of large animals, specifically large cats like tigers. I would like to explain my question with an example. In Assam, few months ago, a tiger was being killed by a whole community belonging to one particular village, and after killing they took away the canines and the teeth, particularly all the articles. So here, when a mass of people are involved in a particular crime, what is forest department supposed to do? They cannot arrest the whole village, or no one is having any kind of eyewitness, or what can the legal procedure here?
Yes, Mansi. I'll also answer your question with an example. So see, if you can Google it, last year, there was one tigress in the Tarai region, very close to the Pilibhit Tiger Reserve bordering Nepal and Uttarakhand. So the tigress was given heavy blows by lathis by many of the villagers there. It was a case of a human wildlife conflict. The tigress was expecting also that time, and you can see the videos that went viral, and there was a hue and cry over Twitter and other social media apps. You can see that with big bamboo sticks, these villagers are actually giving heavy blow on the head of a tigress, and eventually the tigress succumbed to such injuries. The injuries were really fatal, I guess. In the PMR postmortem report, it was the brain hemorrhage the cause of the death. So what happened, what forest department did in that case? They arrested almost half of the village men who were involved, who all can be seen in the video. And you know the modus, what modus was employed by the forest department. So you can see in the video that initially the tigress is also attacking those villagers, those men who are trying to surround her and kill her with a bamboo stick. So all these most of these village men also got injured by the tigress attack. And after this attack, when there was this hue and cry over social media, the matter got politicized as well. The forest department went to the hospital where these injured men were actually hospitalized, and they were going undergoing treatment. All the men from the village who were undergoing treatment, first of all, they were arrested. They were booked under the charge of hunting down a tigress. So it doesn't matter that if in case the entire village is involved in committing a crime, so the law, they can get free from the clutches of the law. No, even if there are 100 men who are involved in killing of any big animal or a small animal, it's what all is required is the investigation skills. The powers are as same as it applies to a single man hunting down a tiger, or a group of village men gathering to hunt down, kill down a big predator or a small animal. So it doesn't matter in that case. I think on the very first day, 25 people were booked. They were not arrested as they were undergoing treatment. The moment they were discharged, they were taken in the custody. So it does not matter as to how many people are involved. The law apply equally, whether it is done in a group or it is done by a single man. And taking of the claw is a distinct offense. Hunting of, so see, such killing under the law amounts to hunting only. If you see the definition of hunting, and if in case you want to know more about hunting and the major laws, I guess on the WTI channel I did one webinar on the hunting laws of India. You can go through it and you'll get to know what amounts to hunting. It's just not killing, it's injuring, it's driving away animals. There are number of acts, such acts also where there is no harm caused to the animal, but then also it attracts the rigors of section 9 hunting. So in law we call it hunting, whether the people have killed any animal for whatsoever intention. Intention is not required. It's a strict liability offense. No mens rea required. It's only the act which counts in the eyes of law in order to prove a case. So hunting of such animal is an offense, and then taking the claws without the permission, and then taking the skin, whatsoever, any animal article, any part of that tiger, that's a distinct offense that involves other penal provisions, and hunting involves other penal provisions. So I hope I am clear. Irrespective of how many member of the village is involved, the law will take its own course and would act equally.
Yeah. Okay, I was about to ask this to Krishna sir. How can I shape my career into this field? I think Krishna sir has already answered in the chat box.
I have tried to answer all those questions. I have answered for 5-6 questions there.
Yes, yes. Thank you, sir. Okay. So Devangsh also suggests that there are many small zoos and private parks in the country. Are these parks legal or illegal? Lovish?
So see, are these where is the question?
Yes. Darsh Chaudhary.
There are many private parks.
Devang Sirani, sorry. Yeah.
All right. Okay. I think I have there are many parks, or we can tell small zoos in which small kind of exotic birds, reptile, and other animals are kept in the park. Use them for show. So see, such private parks first they require to be registered with the Central Zoo Authority. If in case they are not registered, they cannot showcase such exotic birds. And if in case there is a person who has put in a private park, let's say any exotic species, so for that also a registration certificate, which we have already talked about, is required. Permissions from the central government is required. As far as small zoo is concerned, whether small or big, it should be registered with the Central Zoo Authority, the authority which is incorporated under the Wildlife Protection Act. So it's legal or illegal requires to be seen whether such parks are recognized, such rescue centers are recognized under the Wildlife Protection Act with the Central Zoo Authority or not. If in case they are not recognized, they don't have the valid certification, so it's illegal.
Yeah. Okay, something new. Latest chat, Lavish. NCRB data says India has 63% conviction rate in India, but what is the actual truth? Like it's some data thing.
NCRB data says India has 63.5 conviction rate for wildlife crimes in 2022, but recent news article, India has low conviction rate, less than 5%. What is the actual truth? In fact, I don't know the actual truth, but as far as my experience goes, I think it is less than 5%, because given my experience from last 7 to 8 years working pan India with most of the forest department, I have not seen much conviction happening in wildlife crime cases. Faulty investigation done, rule of evidence not followed, which eventually ends into the acquittal of such offenders. So I may go with the latest news article that says that it's less than 5%, and I think it's published by few renowned NGOs as well. So maybe the 5%, I think it seems more likely to be a better census than as compared to the NCRB, if you ask me. Number second, a fact that the Odisha STF has 95 to 90%, 90 to 95% conviction rate. The STF is the Odisha Police Special Task Force. So they are involved in a lot of wildlife crime investigation cases. And I think the most remarkable job done by anyone is the Odisha STF so far. Next comes the MP STF of the Forest Department. They maintain a good conviction rate, 90 to 95% in Orissa. Maybe MP would be 50 to 60%. And recently we saw that for the first time in the history of the Indian judicial system, an international wildlife trafficker, Tashi Sherpa, got convicted for 5 years imprisonment. He was called the international tiger trafficker. So you can read the article. In that case, the MP STF was involved, the Interpol was involved. After a lot of efforts and a lot of time consumed, the man was arrested with the aid of Interpol. MPSTF did a remarkable job, did an amazing investigation, very effective investigation, followed by a very effective prosecution. The man is convicted. So it becomes the first case where an international trafficker was involved.
I think I can add my experience that I think Nepal also was engaged on this Interpol case. Anyway, there is a judicial system differences. In Nepal's case, the conviction rate is very high in wildlife also. The main reason is from the beginning of investigation, the attorney is engaged in Nepalese judicial system, which is not the case in India. Maybe that could be one of the reasons.
Okay. Yes. Okay, we can take the last question. Kiran AP he has asked, what will happen if indigenous people are hunting a protected animal to a dangerous extent? Since they are indigenous people who are protected under the law, what can conservationists do to stop those actions?
See, I think question, I think you erred in understanding that these indigenous people, we call them forest dwellers, forest tribes, they have no protection when it comes to hunting down of wild animal. So there is no exception. There is only one exception if you read, and I can, it's the very last provision from the Wildlife Protection Act. The only exception which is accorded to any indigenous people are from the islands of Nicobar, I guess, that they have a blanket protection of the law that they can very much hunt down the wild animals. Apart from that, there is no such tribe in India, indigenous people, who have been given this immunity to hunt down any wild animal. The immunity which they have is to collect the forest produce and stay in the forest. That's all. The immunity does not extend to killing of protected animals. So even if such forest tribes, forest dwellers indulge into hunting of any wild animal which is protected under the Wildlife Protection Act, they are equally held liable. They are equally answerable to such offenses.
Okay. Thank you. I think we have overshot by a lot. It's 5:24 now. Thank you, Lovish, and thank you, Dr. Acharya, for the conversation. I believe we have learned a lot and a lot of takeaways from the session. If for participants, if you have any further queries, you can always reach out to our team. You can write to any of us at Wildlife Trust of India, and do keep following us on our socials to be a part of more such conversations.
Thank you. Great to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Acharya sir.